Should you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a cannabis license? Or is it a complete waste of your time and money? For some people, it makes no sense to get a cannabis license. But maybe for you, it's the best choice. So today, we'll be going over all cannabis licenses there are, and specifically breaking down if it makes sense for your business. So hopefully you see this before it's too late. If you don't know me yet, I'm Chris. I've spent 20 years in wholesale cannabis. I've held one of California's early state distribution licenses. I've built and sold a licensed cultivation facility, and I've also launched 2 brands into over 100 licensed retail stores in California. Now I teach founders how to launch and scale cannabis brands legally without needing a license, and doing this faster, smarter, and with fewer costly mistakes. So according to JP Morgan, only 9% of businesses will ever reach $1 million in revenue per year. That means that 91% won't. And it's not because they're incapable, it's because the market does not care about intentions, effort, or dreams. It only rewards execution, strategy, and discipline. So I'm not here to promise that you'll be in that 9%. I'm here to show you what it takes to get there. And honestly, most people will not do the work that's required. And remember, we go over this every day on our private school community, as well as a Telegram that gives out industry secrets, as well as through our one-on-one guidance program for cannabis entrepreneurs. The link is below in the description. So some of the most common types of licenses. Number 1 is cultivation. And this has a lot of high risk due to the fluctuating wholesale prices and the market saturation. Not to mention the expensive build outs that is required to get it going. And then you're talking about the drying, the trimming, the storage. All this require large square footage. And brands don't necessarily need to grow flower, especially in the beginning. It's much better to source it from experts. Now, brands don't need to grow flower, especially in the beginning. It's better to source it from experts. The only way I'd recommend owning a cultivation before you have your brand established is if you're partnered with an experienced grower, and ideally a facility that's already proven. And so if you are gonna get a license, I recommend this distribution license first. It's a lower footprint, lower facility cost, compact operations, and it allows you to get your foot in the door. With this license, you're gonna be able to transport product from point A to point B. You're gonna be able to procure product, say from cultivators or manufacturers. And you're also gonna be able to sell that product both in bulk wholesale as well as fulfillment for retail brands to retailers. So for the next license type, there's manufacturing. And there's a variety of manufacturing licenses. In New York, they refer to this as a processor's license. So a couple of the roles this can include is extraction, such as turning biomass into extracts such as distillate, hash rosin, live resin. And that's done through either solvents or non-solvents. And this is a license type that in some states, if you're using solvents to extract, it's a higher tier of manufacturing. You need more inspections and more compliance safety stuff in place. If it's a lower tier where there's no volatile solvents being used, such as hash water extraction, dry keef, any sort of things that don't require chemicals, that type of manufacturing is a lot easier to get. And then you also have consumer finished goods. And consumer finished goods is things like making pre-rolls, packaging bulk flower into ACE, let's say. The other thing would be filling pens, vape pens, as well as packaging extracts. So manufacturing has a broad approach, and it also includes edible production as well. And obviously the other license type is retail, both delivery or non-delivery. And with retail, we'll go over this in a separate video, and it's not really something I'm gonna touch on today. We're talking more behind the scenes, getting product to retail. When you start by getting a license first, here's some of the benefits people expect to have. You can legally touch the plant. You have access to cultivation, manufacturing, or retail. You control your own supply chain. There's no relying on other operators' quality or timelines. And you potentially get better margins. And obviously at a huge scale, you can wholesale and white label for other brands. And we'll talk about how this isn't feasible, especially when starting out. Having a license also increases your legitimacy with investors, distributors, and partners. And in some instances, owning a license becomes an asset that you can sell or leverage later. However, it's very hard to get to that point. Most licenses are liabilities. And another benefit of owning a license is the independence. No one can necessarily shut off your production or raise your prices. However, unfortunately, this is not always the case. In reality, there's a lot of drawbacks to owning a license, especially before you have a profitable brand. First and obvious is the fees. There's tons of fees included, and it's not just the licensing fee, it's holding the property, the lawyer fees, the taxes, your architect fees, tons of stuff that go into it before your license can even be turned on. Then you have to have all your compliance that's required. And this includes frequent inspections, proper training for your employees, as well as constant operational oversight. You're also going to have a track and trace system in place, such as in California, we use metric. And this is where every gram of product that makes a move needs to be tracked. The other drawback to licenses is you have to secure the real estate in a cannabis-friendly zone that the city or state mandates you can have cannabis licenses in these certain neighborhoods. So that automatically jacks up the rent. And then when you get the right real estate, you got to secure that with a personal guarantee, which means that no matter what, if that business makes money, fails, closes, shuts the doors, you're guaranteeing to pay the life of that lease to the landlord. So if you have a 5-year lease, you have to pay all 12 months of all 5 years, whether you make money or not. So there's a major capital investment. And this could be well over $400,000 or $500,000 a year from your payroll, security, legal, employees. And landlords take advantage of the zoning scarcity, driving up high rent, $3, $5, $6 a square foot sometimes. So owning multiple licenses increases your complexity and your risk. This is why it's best to have a license after your brand is already profitable. Because owning a license does not guarantee profits. The most lucrative element in this whole equation is the brand equity. So to really find out what's best for you, click below to have a one-on-one call with me where we can really find out what works best for you and your brand. And if you're still looking around, check out my school and Telegram community below. So here's what I suggest. Avoid your costly setup, focus on building your brand awareness and generating your sales first. Outsource your manufacturing and packaging to licensed operators, especially during the brand building phase. And reduce your overhead. This avoids compliance headaches and simplifies your logistics. You're also going to avoid the $400,000 or $500,000 plus per year in operational and legal costs tied to owning just a single license. You also remove a lot of the legal liability and personal guarantee on leases, avoiding zoning related rent markups. So that high rent that these facilities have to pay, you're not going to be personally on the hook for that. And this is also a great way to test the market as well as establish your brand identity and gauge consumer response on your products and on your brand. See, the focus is going to remain on your revenue and your sales, as well as your product development and marketing. And you avoid all the heavy compliance that you have to deal with because the license holders, your license partners, deal with that. Then you want to take the profits from your brand and reinvest that into growth instead of taking all that money and dumping it into license setup and facility build outs. Grow your brand, get it established, get it profitable, and then start partnering with operational licenses if it makes sense. And by doing this, you also avoid having to handle the compliance with metric, the employees, the inspections, risks of shutdowns and embargoes on product. It's a real thing that a lot of license holders are dealing with, especially right now in California. So it starts to make sense to own your own license and your supply chain after you're already in 200 stores. So until you get into 200 stores, don't even worry about owning a license. Just focus on scaling your brand, keeping your brand profitable. And then after you hit that 200 store mark, or as you're approaching it, that's when you want to start consider strategic licensing, whether owning your own or partnering with a license holder somehow. So until you have your own license set up, you want to lean on your licensed supply chain partners, and you're going to utilize them for your compliance testing, your packaging, your retail distribution. And this is all done through IP licensing agreements. The best option, in my opinion, especially getting started, and this is without a doubt, is going to be running your brand without owning a license and using supply chain partners for your licensing. So don't get a license too early. Instead, sell your product through your licensed supply chain partners until you approach 200 stores. You want to focus on creating a strong brand with a loyal customer base, and then use those profits strategically to acquire licenses at lower costs and improve your supply chain control. And remember, always weigh the license value versus the risk and the cost and the operational burden of having a license. And I know all this firsthand experience. I've had my first distribution license back in 2018, which we ended up shutting down. I've subsequently partnered up with a second distribution license, which I've been involved with for approaching four and a half years now, I believe. And so that's a better situation where we run it as low impact as possible. We have one employee there. We don't have it open to the public. It's just used internally. And it only makes sense because we run it on such a shoestring budget. But some of these big distros out there are just burning through cash. So the other thing is I had my licensed cultivation facility for 3.5 years. And not only was it a big burden, but I ended up doing the same thing that I'm doing. I basically sold a bunch of weed, saved up my money to buy into a license. And then when I bought into the license and owned the license, now the burden was selling all the weed that we grew, whether it was good, whether it was bad, whether it was moldy, whether there were seeds in it. And just even if you're the greatest grower in the world, you're gonna encounter these setbacks. You're gonna have problems with your crops. And that's the biggest blow to an operator, because you're probably depending on that money to pay your employees, to pay your light bill, to pay your rent. And if you have a bad harvest that month, it's gonna slow down that cash flow. And not only that, but you're gonna be putting at risk the future of that business. So one bad harvest can send you into a tailspin that is hard to pull out of. Next is with manufacturing. If you're running a manufacturing license, your customers are brands. You're literally, the more you make, it means the more pieces of product that you make for brands. Or if you're creating bulk distillate, bulk live resin, bulk hash rosin, again, you're just a commodity producer selling to brands. So your end buyer is a brand. So rather than being a commodity producer, from cultivating, from manufacturing, even distribution, commodity is defined by when the market sets the price. And the brand, when you have a brand, the market isn't necessarily setting the price of that brand. The brand determines the price based on the brand value that it's providing, the emotional connection it has with the customer base, the brand value that it's built, and the brand presence that it's built. So that is inherent that you can't quantify into a metric. And that's where commodities come into play. Is commodities, the market sets that price. Whether you're growing corn, whether you're growing cannabis, whether you're extracting distillate, whether you're extracting olive oil, doesn't matter. It's a commodity. And then what happens is the brands buy those commodities at market price, and they mark it up through their brand value. They break it down into smaller increments to sell to consumers, but it's not about those smaller increments that's making the profit. It's really the brand value that drives those sales and drives that profit. And that brand has to be developed to speak directly to a certain niche of a target demographic. And if you don't design your brand foundation properly, it's not going to speak to that target demographic properly. And what I see so many people do is they just whip up a logo, they whip up some packaging, they make an IG. At best, maybe they make a website too, but that doesn't equate to a brand. It just represents a brand. A true brand build out comes with it, the entire brand foundation, understanding what does that brand stand for, who does it serve, what's the brand positioning, the brand messaging, the brand values, the brand vision, the brand voice, the brand guidelines, the brand heritage. There's a lot of components that go into it that create the personality of that brand. And that brand personality connects with your target demographic through an emotional connection. And that emotional connection is truly what scales your brand into profitability. If you don't have that emotional connection, you're just selling off logic. And at that point, you're just selling off of competing on price. And we all know that there's a bottom to be able to compete on price. And if you're competing on price, you also need a big war chest of money in order to stand up to those big producers that have that big war chest of money that can compete on price. And that's all the brand is about, is a price point focused brand. And I'm willing to guarantee that most of you watching this video right now aren't in a position to go compete on price with $100 million brands out there currently. And what I recommend is building your brand the right way, the proper way, to speak on an emotional level. And now your brand will be successful if you can figure out how to do that. So if this sounds good to you, we have a community of brand owners just like you, and it's people that have been in this game for a long time, as well as people that are just starting out. So to really hit the next level with your brand, click below, schedule a one-on-one call with me, and this is where we can really find out what works for your brand. And if you're looking for some free advice and to meet other people in your situation, join our free school and Telegram community. The links are below in the description. Obviously follow my IG, I just got it back, cannabis.academy, and follow my brand pages too, zodix.chris and zodix_lifestyle. And as always, join my email newsletter. There's a lot of in-depth free game that goes out weekly. And until next time, I'll see you next week on the next YouTube video. Appreciate the support for the channel, and I look forward to helping 1,000 brand owners build up their brands to $1 million a year in revenue so we can pull $1 billion away from the corporate market share. So let's get this money and let's build these brands.